GOAT, Caitlin Clark, come out and say what needed to be said. She stood on business and said, we need to play in games. And y'all that are signed to these other leagues that are compromised, stop playing with the people who are not. Stop playing games. Let's get to it. Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
So here's what just happened. Kelsey Plum, the first vice president of the WNBA Players Association, just drew a hard line in contract negotiations. But what makes this moment explosive is what happened just hours earlier. Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest superstar, said the complete opposite while speaking at USA basketball camp in North Carolina. The most valuable player in the league went public, urging both sides to find common ground and emphasizing that players need to be on the court this season. Plum fired back, saying the talks have been deeply frustrating and that both sides are still miles apart from a deal. Two superstars, two completely opposing messages. And here's the kicker. One of them owns part of a rival league.
Kelsey Plum's response is in this. This is crazy, man. Like, you're signed to Unrivaled. You got equity in Unrivaled. Like, y'all are somewhat compromised on the situation to a degree, even if you're it's just weird, man. It's a little weird. Y'all on the board, but y'all got equity in the competitor leagues. It's all a little conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Here it says, Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark said Friday that while WNBA players will fight for everything we deserve during their current round of collective bargaining agreement negotiations.
Watch that moment closely. Clark wasn't just speaking off the cuff. At Duke University on January 10th, 2025, she made it clear that fans are hungry for the product on the floor and that both sides have to bend if they want a deal done. This wasn't a throwaway comment in a casual interview. This was the league's crown jewel, the player who delivered 3.2 million viewers to WNBA broadcasts last season, going public and applying pressure for something to happen. She specifically warned that players are hitting crunch time in these negotiations. That's diplomatic language for we're running out of runway, and this needs to get done now. Now here's where things get complicated. The WNBA and the Players Union already pushed back their original deadline once, extending it to January 19th. That gave them an extra 6 weeks beyond the December cutoff they initially set. They've already burned through 3 weeks of that extension. And based on what Plum is saying, they're still nowhere close to reaching an agreement. That's alarming when half of your buffer time is already gone after missing the first deadline entirely.
Agreed to a second extension of the current CBA through January 9th, 2026, as both sides continue to work toward a new deal. But questions persist on whether both sides will come to an agreement by then, or even whether a work stoppage could be on the horizon. Now, this is what Kelsey Plum had to say. Kelsey Plum, first vice president of the WNBPA, said at Camp Friday that the talks have been a little disheartening. Just the frustration.
The league just put forward its latest offer, and it's a big one. A maximum salary for 2026 starting at a guaranteed $1 million floor. When you factor in projected revenue sharing, elite players could be earning more than $1.2 million per year. The salary cap would jump to $5 million in 2026, then continue rising annually, tied directly to league revenue. By the numbers, it's a massive leap forward. Right now, the max salary sits at $241,984. This would mean more than quadrupling what top players can make. But here's where things break down. The union isn't just asking for higher salaries. They want a complete overhaul of the entire system. A new revenue-sharing model. Mandatory standards for team facilities and staffing. Expanded benefits across the board. And that's where negotiations keep stalling. The league is willing to write $1 million paychecks, but to make the math work, players would have to give up some current benefits like housing stipends and vehicle allowances. The union refuses to trade one benefit for another. They want everything, higher pay, and the full benefits package.
Players' priorities are transforming the league's salary structure and revenue sharing system, introducing standards for team facilities and staffing, and garnering more robust benefits. The league has said it wants to substantially increase players' salary and other cost commitments, while also incentivizing owners to continue to invest in operating the business and building sustained profitability. The most recently reported league proposal.
This is exactly where Caitlin Clark separates herself from the union's current strategy. She isn't on the negotiating committee. Her Fever teammates, Lexi Hull, Lexi Brown, and Aaliyah Boston, handle player representation, while Brianna Stewart serves as the union's treasurer. Clark gets briefed on what's happening, but she isn't in the room making the final calls. That distance gives her the freedom to say things others won't. There are battles we should go to war over, and there are areas where we can find middle ground. Listen closely to how she framed it. She made it clear that players will absolutely fight for what they've earned and what they deserve, but both sides have to be willing to compromise somewhere. That isn't caving. That isn't weakness. That's strategic thinking about the bigger picture. She's recognizing that if you demand everything with zero flexibility, you risk ending up with nothing at all. And nothing means no season. No season means no games. No games means no spotlight. And no spotlight means all the momentum built in 2024 disappears overnight.
That's what that line should have said. They are looking to capitalize off of Caitlin Clark, because if there was no Caitlin Clark in this league, they would have already agreed on a deal. Trust and believe, they wouldn't be doing all this hard negotiating and this and that if there was no Caitlin Clark that came in this league and brought the numbers, brought the viewership, brought everything. Simple as that. Simple as that. Here it says, what I'm proud of is that we play with a group of women that are united and we're standing on something, Plum said. Chicago Sky All-Star Angel Reese echoed that sentiment. I think everybody's really intentional about what we want. I think the players in WNBA have done.
Clark sees something others seem to be missing entirely. The WNBA just had the greatest year in its history, and it happened because of her impact. Attendance at Fever games doubled almost overnight. Viewership records were shattered. Merchandise sold out. Corporate sponsors lined up instantly. This wasn't slow, incremental growth. This was an explosion, the Caitlin Clark effect, and everyone in basketball knows it. Even the reporting hints at it, saying the league wants to capitalize on the WNBA's recent growth. What they really mean is capitalizing on what Clark delivered throughout 2024. But moments like this don't last forever. If there's number 2025 season, those casual fans who just discovered the WNBA will move on. They'll find something else to watch. The momentum disappears completely. And here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. Most of these players will never get another opportunity like this. This is their window to secure life-changing money. Clark is warning them. Don't blow it by refusing to bend at all. Kelsey Plum isn't buying that message. She went on record saying players are fully united and standing firm on their principles. Angel Reese echoed that sentiment, stressing that players are being deliberate about what they want and sticking together. That's classic union solidarity language, the kind you hear when sides are digging in and preparing for a fight.
For a strike.
The 2024 number one pick in women's basketball sensation has called this the biggest moment the WNBA has seen, making it all the more important that we find a way to play this next season. A work stoppage could emerge if the owners opt to lock out the players or the players opt to strike. I think there are different things that we can find ways to say no. We certainly deserve that, and we're not going to compromise on that. And there are other things we can probably compromise on. You want to understand both sides and be respectful of both sides, but at the end of the day, come to a compromise. Caitlin Clark is the mature.
Now let's talk about the massive elephant in the room that nobody wants to address directly. Kelsey Plum is a co-founder of Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league launching in Miami this month. She owns equity in that league. She signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Unrivaled. She literally sits on its board of directors that when WNBA negotiations keep dragging on and the possibility of number 2025 season becomes more real. What's the logical outcome? Players will need somewhere to play, and suddenly Unrivaled is perfectly positioned as the alternative. That's exactly what people mean when they talk about conflicts of interest. Plum is negotiating on behalf of 144 WNBA players, yet she personally benefits if those talks collapse and players are forced to look elsewhere. And she's not alone. Breanna Stewart, the union treasurer who's actually in the negotiating room making decisions, is also a co-founder of Unrivaled with significant equity in the league. Nafisa Collier has the same setup. These are the leaders driving the union strategy, and all of them have major financial stakes in a direct competitor to the WNBA. Caitlin Clark doesn't have that same conflict shaping her perspective. She isn't signed with Unrivaled. She isn't locked into Athletes Unlimited or any alternative league. Her entire value, her brand, her earning power, her future, is tied directly to the WNBA's success. If there's no WNBA season in 2025, she loses a full year of her prime earning window. She can't simply pivot to another league, where a guaranteed paycheck is already waiting. That's why her viewpoint is fundamentally different from the union leadership's. Clark needs the WNBA to thrive. She needs it to grow. For her, there's no backup plan, and that's exactly why she's pushing for compromise while others are digging in.
Clark at this point in time. Get down in the comments and let me know what you think. This is Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe.
So here's where things stand as crunch time approaches. The hard deadline is January 19th, 2025, less than 2 weeks away. And realistically, negotiations need to be finalized well before that to give teams enough runway to prepare for the season. Training camps typically start in April. Free agency usually begins in February. If there's no agreement by late January or early February, the entire 2025 season enters serious jeopardy. And based on current reporting, the two sides are still far apart. According to statements from union leadership, Caitlin Clark has gone public calling for both sides to compromise and find common ground. She's emphasizing that this is the biggest moment in WNBA history and that it's critical to get players on the court this season. She's openly acknowledging that a full work stoppage is a real possibility, whether through a lockout or a strike, and she's actively trying to prevent that nuclear outcome. She's positioning herself as the mature, stabilizing voice in these discussions. Kelsey Plum is taking a very different approach. She continues to stress how frustrating and disappointing the negotiations have been and how much distance still separates the two sides. She's building momentum around the idea that players are unified and standing firm on their principles. That's the kind of rhetoric you hear when people are preparing for a prolonged fight, not when they're gearing up to find middle ground and close a deal.